Hi everyone, my name's Andrew Seago.
And I'm Madeline Seago, and we're both architects at Historical Concepts, a firm in Atlanta, Georgia in the U.S.
Today we're going to present our paper, An Architectural Perspective on Sketching. The art of perspective sketching and the art of architecture have always gone together. Often they flourish within the same hand and mind. Sketching, as distinct from drawing, however, has never really taken a place in the pantheon of the arts. It's not as glamorous as mature architectural drawing, but a sketch is often the original medium of conception for an architectural idea. It may be the most efficient way to communicate the nature of an architectural space to clients or to other designers. So if there's one exercise that can improve an architect's graphic communication ability, it's sketching regularly. Most architects will acquire the fundamentals of this skill over time, but most have never formally studied its nuances, which we think is a worthwhile enterprise.
By sketching, we mean the practice of rapid hand drawing in perspective, usually done with pen or pencil. While one can certainly sketch a floor plan or an elevation for a design, a depiction of an existing scene in 3 dimensions is the scope of our paper today. Of course, sketches are often the basis for more refined drawings later, but typically they remain in a rough state.
Although a drawing can be created with the help of slower techniques such as 1, 2, or 3-point perspective, or even outsourced to computers, a hand sketch is limited by the keenness of the artist's eye, the expressiveness of their hand, and the shortness of the time. So by nature, they're quickly done, and they must be efficient. When you add more lines to a good sketch, you can only detract from its conciseness. Close study of a careful drawing will reveal a finer level of detail than what can be seen at a distance, but close inspection of an exemplary sketch, just like with an impressionist painting, reveals a surprising lack of detail, resolution, or even logic in the pencil strokes. And achieving this effect is really challenging because you have to do it without time for conscious effort, instead relying on the intuition of your hand and a toolbox of mental tricks and muscle memory to capture the subject without really just drafting it. These techniques we think are well worth the architect's study and practice, and we don't have time to expound on every sketching technique. We can offer a few specific skills that require special practice, and we can recommend some more thorough explanations by others.
A sketch can be a perspective of an existing view, an imagined view, or a hybrid of the two. What we might call observational sketching strengthens the artist's memory of a particular place, and may be for documentation, analysis, or artistic expression. Design sketching is generally completed in the studio and aims to clearly express the specific ideas of a designer. And observational sketching from life or photographs is generally the best practice for studio drawing.
While you can make a brilliant sketch just on a napkin, it helps to have familiar and high quality materials. So HB, 2B, and 2H pencils are a good place to start, but not all drawings will use more than one of these. 2H is great for light guidelines, HB or 2B are great for efficient shading. You should explore different media, such as pen or charcoal, but know that pencil tends to produce the most expressive sketches with the most control. You can also put a few extra sheets of paper between your sketch and the drawing surface underneath, which will give the paper some softness and let you make more varied strokes by pressing into it and varying the width of the lines. For a 15-minute sketch, it's important to limit the drawing area to maybe just 4 by 6 inches or even smaller.
Before starting a sketch, take a moment to imagine the finished drawing. Sketching isn't about copying, but rather about finding the essential character of a subject. Squint at the scene, use your fingers to frame your scene, and take note of where the dark pieces are and where the focus of your scene will be. Quickly black out the major forms to ensure that they fit on your paper and leave a pleasing border of white space. You'll find that all the rules of architectural composition have a corollary in composing a sketch. Make sure the composition doesn't lean to one side, sink on the page, or lack a focus. If it seems like it might, perhaps introduce something else, another element, to restore the balance, or play with the depth of the shadows. As you're drawing, pay attention to the level of detail you're giving at the different parts of the sketch. The eye tends to focus on the places that have received the most attention from the artist, or the areas of the highest contrast. A sharp pencil will add quick dark strokes where the focus of the sketch should lie. Perceptiveness is important, but not every detail can or should be rendered on the page.
It's natural to draw with a certain idea in mind that the pencil marks are the figure and the white paper is the ground, and usually this is the case when we sketch. However, a practiced sketcher can flip this relationship and see the negative space of the paper as figural. This is a mental leap that results in a richer and more accurate drawings. In the default mindset, every feature of a subject is drawn as though it's an object, no matter how complicated or strange the outline. But with this mental switch, the artist discovers that it's often easier and more effective to draw the space between objects. Omitting all but the necessary lines flatters the eye and allows it to complete the picture even without some of the information, which results in a more compelling sketch.
It is important to work within the rules of believable perspective. It is impractical to construct every perspective with vanishing points and a straight edge, but it is a good habit to constantly check lines and angles against what's known to be true. There should almost never be sky appearing below the line of the horizon, so it's useful to lightly indicate the skyline on the page to keep from dipping below it. This will also quickly betray whether a drawing is situated too far at the top or the bottom of the page. Vertical parallel lines in the subject usually appear parallel in the sketch, unless the viewpoint is looking dramatically up or down. Horizontal parallel lines, such as roof ridges, should vanish and point toward the same place on the page, or else even the layman's eye will sense that something is not quite right. We recommend every sketcher take the time to learn to construct perspectives accurately the slow and laborious way, as described in Francis Ching in Architectural Graphics, for example. Merely by knowing how a view would be technically constructed, the architect will better approximate the placement of their lines and end up with a more believable result.
Once you've marked out the basic forms of a subject, you can move on to suggesting shade and shadow. The difference between the two is shadow is the area of darkness cast by an object blocking out the light, whereas shade is the slightly lighter area of darkness on the object blocking out the light. Notice that shadows' edges are typically darker than they are inside, and areas of shadows typically catch the eye before areas of shade because of this higher contrast at their edge. So you can take a separate sheet of paper and use your pencil tilted a little bit to quickly and darkly cover an area, and this will give you a chisel-shaped point that will help you to cover large areas of medium shade with the flat side, and then you can use the point to pick out smaller areas of dark with the edge. It's important to register subtle details when sketching, and there are certain predictable shadows that the eye encounters often. For example, windows viewed from an oblique angle usually have a dark area at the underside of the head jamb, and then a dark line that helps you judge the depth of the building. These two areas are typically connected by a triangle formed by the shadow that's cast by the head of the window. Similarly, an architect will soon learn how a few deft pencil strokes can abbreviate and suggest the shapes of different kinds of column capitals. So a Doric capital creates droopy little angles on the column shaft, and an Ionic hangs mittens from the volutes. Shutters will often make a little offset rectangle that can be angled at the bottom to suggest that they are only partly open. And chimneys will cast a triangle or a parallelogram onto a sloped roof, which will be wavy if the roof is barrel tiled. Fence post shadows quickly disappear into grass. These and other tropes can help make a sketch concise, elegant, and convincing. When you're first analyzing a subject, pay attention to the various masses of the composition and organize them into layers. It helps to squint if necessary. The blurry vision smooths over minute tonal differences and will leave you with 3 or 4 simplistic tones: light, medium, and dark. Once these masses have been drawn, you can shade them indiscriminately with the distinct tones, starting with the darkest, and at first just disregard the subtleties of the true tones. And then after this wash of tone has been applied, you can go back over and highlight or darken individual details in the sketch if desired. This method helps clarify the compositions, and it's an effective way to attack seemingly complicated subjects. It gives your sketch multiple layers, which helps it read better. The instinct of a practiced artist will begin to account for the subtle gradations and highlights on the first pass, and thus produce a more sophisticated sketch. Although they are more developed in proper drawings than the sketches, the work of Samuel Chamberlain shows a fine tonal intelligence.
The architect should not hesitate to introduce color if they are confident that it will improve the clarity of the sketch. Often, attempting to render colors realistically, whether in pencil or watercolor, may have the opposite of the effect by muddying the drawing or obscuring the few important pencil strokes. So therefore, try to select 1 or 2 symbolic colors to apply consistently across the sketch to emphasize a specific material in the composition. A common example would be shading all areas of foliage green or all roofs a terracotta color.
Most of us, when we're sketching, naturally focus on the architecture of a given scene. But sometimes the result of this is a beautifully rendered building with a blank field of space around it and no context. So it's important to learn how to sketch the entourage as well. That's, the people, animals, plants, vehicles, and the other objects that locate a building and give it scale and make it a living sketch. The focus that you put on the entourage doesn't have to be equal to that of the subject. The important thing is just that it's intentional and lends an air of realism to the drawing. And you can also use entourage to edit the scene. You can use it to shift or balance the area of focus in a drawing. The human figure is an important element. It's often stylized in architectural sketches to avoid attempting its true complexity. But the best way to practice is just to draw figures from life. Make 20 or more drawings at once, just 5 seconds or up to 30 seconds. You can make them quite small and from various distances, but the important thing is to just look briefly and then try to record the pose or the shape of a figure in just a few seconds. And this will train you to be really efficient with your brush strokes or your pencil strokes. And then eventually move on to sketching more elaborate subjects, more people from up close or people from in groups from a distance, and then public piazzas, train stations, markets, and parks. These provide crowds which are really useful for practicing entourage.
Sketching is not a replacement for a fine architectural drawing, but constant sketching can improve one's drawing with time, and vice versa. The act of omission teaches a sketcher's mind what is important in a longer drawing as well, and they will learn accordingly what to emphasize and what to de-emphasize on the paper. The opposite is also true. Slow architectural drawings, especially when drawn from life, will increase one's intuition and understanding of shadows, details, texture, and form.
We would recommend sketching on site whenever possible, since there's no other way to simulate the true quality and variety of the light. But sketching from a photograph can also be good practice. An additional benefit is that over weeks and months of sketching, you develop a catalog of precedent. And this is a useful tool for any designer. If you're practicing from photographs, choose images to draw carefully. We like to start with black and white photographs, which have already simplified the colors into the relative tones for you. You can find really good sketching subjects in books, websites, online archives, state historical image archives, and you should reference the work of great artists. Bertram Goodhue, Samuel Chamberlain, John Singer Sargent, Hubert Robert, Otto Eggers. These are just a few of our favorite examples. Whenever you have an opportunity, you should examine these original masterpieces in person, as this kind of study will reveal surprises and quirks about their technique that reproductions don't. So study and even trace the work of old and newer masters.
We advocate strongly for adopting the practice of the quick daily sketch if drawing makes up any part of your professional life. Like any repeated habit or exercise, 15 minutes each day will eventually result in drastic improvements to one's ability. Completing the sketch in a group is also a valuable experience. Not only does the quarter of an hour provide a mind-engaging way to start the day, but music, conversation, and camaraderie during a sketch can help create a positive, creative environment. After the time is up, assemble the sketches, take notes of good techniques that others are using, and compare the myriad of ways that one image may be understood. Thank you.